Our story begins in a kingdom on the brink of ruin. Drevania, once a flourishing realm of strength and unity, now lies in disarray. At its heart stands King Valen, a man weathered by years of battle and the crushing weight of ruling a kingdom that's falling apart. The people call him the Ashen King, his once vibrant eyes dulled by loss and his once proud spirit weighed down by the burden of leadership. He has spent years fighting to hold the kingdom together, fighting drought, famine, and now the whispers of rebellion among his own court. The years have turned him cold, distant, a shadow of the king he once was. But Valen wasn't always this way. There was a time when he fought for more than just survival. He fought for Drevania's future, for the people he loved, and for the hope of a better tomorrow. Now that hope feels distant, like an ember barely clinging to life. His throne room, once filled with the vibrant colors of the kingdom's glory, is now draped in the grayness of decay. The walls crumble, just as his kingdom does, and Valen feels powerless. But then she arrives. Princess Aylin of Thalon, a woman sent to Drevania as part of a political alliance. She's expected to marry Valen, to strengthen the bond between their kingdoms. But Aylin is no meek princess. She is a force of nature, a whirlwind of passion, compassion, and fire. Her heart burns for her people, and she has no intention of just being a pawn in a political game. From the moment Aylin enters the kingdom, she proves to be more than Valen anticipated. Valen is taken aback by Aylin's boldness and wit. She looks at him not with fear or admiration, but with the eyes of someone who sees beyond the Ashen King. She sees the man underneath, the one who is hurting, broken, but still holding on. And for the first time in years, Valen feels a flicker of something more than duty. Their first meeting is tense, words exchanged like swords. Aylin challenges Valen in ways no one else dares. "Why do you stand idle while your kingdom falls?" she demands, her voice sharp but laced with an undertone of care. Valen, used to being obeyed, is taken aback. How dare she question him? But beneath his defensive anger, there is a strange sense of relief. Someone, finally, sees through the armor he's built around his heart. "You don't understand," Valen growls, his voice cold. "This kingdom is beyond saving." But Aylin tells him, "It's only beyond saving if you've already given up." Valen simply replies by telling her to prepare for the wedding. A few days later, their wedding is held with quiet simplicity, a far cry from the grand ceremonies one would expect for royalty. The once celebrated capital, Kaloth, is still shrouded in the gloom of its decline. But for a brief moment, Valen's world shifts. As Aylin walks toward him, dressed in a gown of soft ivory, she looks like a vision from another time, a reminder of the beauty and hope Drevania once had. Her eyes, fierce yet tender, meet his, and for the first time in years, Valen feels something stir deep within him. His heart skips a beat. In that moment, despite the weight of his kingdom's troubles, he cannot deny that Aylin makes him feel alive again. In the days that follow their wedding, Aylin remains a fierce force in Valen's life, continuing to question his decisions and confront him on the kingdom's failings. She refuses to sit quietly on the sidelines as Valen wants, or thinks he wants. Each conversation feels like a battle, their words sharp and defensive. But behind the sharp exchanges is a deeper connection brewing. Valen, long accustomed to seeing everyone around him as either an ally or an enemy, starts to wonder where Aylin fits in his world. There is fire in her defiance, a passion in her arguments that stirs something long dormant in him. She's not merely questioning his authority. She's daring him to be better, to fight harder. Aylin sees through Valen's cold, hardened exterior. She sees not the Ashen King, but a man weighed down by the impossible burden of a kingdom on the brink of collapse. Though they argue over the future of Drevania, there are moments in between that reveal the growing tension between them. Tension of a different kind. When they discuss strategy in the dim light of the war room, their hands brush by accident. The touch lingers just a second longer than it should, sending a jolt of electricity through Valen's veins. Aylin's breath catches, but neither says a word. Still, the spark is undeniable. One evening, after a particularly heated argument about the kingdom's dwindling resources, Aylin storms out of the room. Valen follows, his heart racing with frustration and something more. He catches up to her in the palace gardens, the moon casting a soft glow on her silhouette. She whirls around to face him, her eyes blazing with fury. "Why must you always be so stubborn?" she snaps. "And why must you always challenge me?" Valen shoots back, though his voice softens as he steps closer. "You push me to the brink, Aylin. Every time I think I've found the answer, you're there to tear it apart. Because you need someone to push you," she replies, her voice quieter now, almost a whisper. "You've given up on this kingdom, on yourself. But I see the strength in you, Valen, even if you don't." Their eyes lock, and the distance between them feels impossibly small. The air is thick with unspoken emotions. Valen's heart pounds in his chest, louder than the distant sounds of the crumbling city. He reaches out hesitantly, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. "You don't know what it's like to carry this weight," he murmurs, his voice heavy with vulnerability. "Then let me carry it with you," Aylin says, stepping closer, her breath warm against his skin. The moment stretches, the world around them fading into nothing. Valen leans in, slowly, as if giving her the chance to pull away, but Aylin doesn't. Instead, she closes the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that feels like a spark, igniting in the darkness. It's soft at first, tentative, as though both are unsure of what they've just set in motion. But then, as the kiss deepens, it becomes something more, a silent declaration of the bond forming between them. For Valen, it's like a breath of fresh air after years of suffocation, a reminder that he's not as alone as he thought. Aylin, too, feels the rush of something new, something powerful, a fluttering in her chest, as though the world has shifted on its axis. When they finally pull away, breathless, Valen rests his forehead against hers, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've never needed anyone," he confesses, "but I think I need you." Aylin smiles, a warmth spreading through her as she replies, "Then let's face this together." As Aylin and Valen make plans to rebuild the kingdom, Lord Kieran, once one of King Valen's trusted vassals, grows increasingly dissatisfied with the king's rule. In the face of Drevania's crumbling infrastructure and growing unrest, Kieran saw an opportunity, a chance to take power for himself. He resented Valen's distant leadership and blamed him for the kingdom's state, convincing himself that Drevania needed a new ruler, one with strength and vision, himself. In secret, he began to amass an army, drawing soldiers and mercenaries from Drevania's discontented provinces and promising them wealth and glory in exchange for their loyalty. By the time Valen received word of Kieran's betrayal, it was too late. The traitors' forces were already marching on Kaloth, the capital city, their numbers swelling with each passing day. Valen, though hurt by Kieran's betrayal, had no time to mourn. The city needed to be defended, and Drevania's very future was at stake. His warrior instincts kicked in, and he began preparing the remaining forces for battle. He suggested a safe hideout to Aylin, but she refused to remain on the sidelines. "This isn't just your fight," she told Valen, her voice firm but filled with compassion. "I stand with you, always." At first, Valen tried to argue, insisting that she stay safe within the palace walls. But Aylin was resolute. "If you can trust me with your heart, Valen, then trust me to fight for this kingdom too," she said, holding his hand. Her words struck a chord deep within him, a reminder of the growing bond between them. He had learned to depend on her, to see her as his equal. Valen relented, though his heart clenched at the thought of her being in danger. "Stay close to me," he told her. The siege began with the thunder of Kieran's army at the city's gates. The air was thick with the acrid scent of smoke as fire catapults launched burning debris into Kaloth's walls. Valen led his soldiers to defend the capital, his sword flashing as he cut through enemy lines with the precision of a seasoned warrior. And there, beside him, was Aylin, fearless and unwavering. She fought with the determination of someone who believed not just in Valen, but in Drevania's future. The nights were long and filled with tension, but in the small moments between the chaos, Valen and Aylin found solace in one another. After one particularly brutal day of fighting, They sat by a flickering fire within the palace walls. Valen's armor was stained with dirt and blood, his expression grim. But when Aylin leaned against his side, her warmth melted some of the ice that had settled in his heart. "Sometimes I wonder," Valen began quietly, his gaze distant, "if I'm meant to fail, if this kingdom is meant to fall, no matter what I do." Aylin turned to face him, her hand resting gently on his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart. "You're wrong, Valen. I've seen your strength, your resilience. You're more than the Ashen King the world sees. You're the man who fights even when the odds are against him. And I believe in that man." Valen's breath caught as he looked into her eyes, the firelight reflecting in their depths. There was a tenderness there that he had never known before, a belief in him that ran deeper than words. He reached up, his calloused hand cupping her cheek. "I never thought I'd find someone like you," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the crackling fire. "And I never thought I'd fall for a king of ashes." Aylin teased softly, her lips curving into a smile, but there was nothing mocking in her tone, only love. Without another word, Valen leaned in, capturing her lips in a kiss that was both tender and filled with unspoken emotion. The kiss deepened, slow and deliberate, as if they were both savoring the sweetness of the moment amidst the chaos surrounding them. It was the kind of kiss that made Valen forget, even if just for a moment, the weight of the crown and the battles yet to come. It was a promise, a silent vow that they would face whatever came next, together. When they finally pulled apart, Valen rested his forehead against hers. "I don't deserve you," he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. Aylin smiled softly, brushing her lips against his again in a feather-light kiss. "You do," she replied simply. "You always have." The siege dragged on for days, with Kieran's forces pressing harder each day. But Valen and Aylin's resolve only grew stronger. They fought side by side, their bond a source of strength not only for each other, but for the soldiers who rallied behind them. Word spread quickly through the city of the king and queen who fought together, their love a beacon of hope for a kingdom on the edge of destruction. During the final push, Lord Kieran launched an all-out assault on the city's gates, hoping to break through and seize control once and for all. But Valen, with Aylin at his side, led the charge to defend Kaloth. The battle was fierce, the clash of swords and the roar of soldiers filling the air. Valen fought with a renewed sense of purpose, every strike of his blade carrying the weight of his love for Aylin and his desire to protect what they had built together. And when the battle was finally over, with Kieran's forces scattered and defeated, Valen looked out over the blood-stained battlefield. His body was weary, but his heart was light. Beside him, Aylin stood tall, her eyes filled with pride and love as they surveyed the city they had saved. Valen reached for her hand, pulling her close as they stood amidst the ruins. "I couldn't have done this without you," he said softly, his voice filled with awe. "You've been my strength when I had none left." Aylin smiled, her fingers lacing through his. "We're stronger together, Valen, and we always will be." As the sun set over the battered walls of Kaloth, they shared one more kiss, this one softer, more delicate than the one before. It was a kiss filled with hope, with the promise of a future they would rebuild, side by side. Together they had faced the darkness, and together they would lead Drevania into the light.